In early January 2012, thousands of people from various European countries gathered at the Italian port of Civitavecchia. For most of them, it was a long-awaited vacation, a winter Mediterranean cruise aboard one of Europe's largest passenger ships, the Costa Concordia. Among the passengers were families with children, elderly couples, tourists from Germany, France, Italy, the United Kingdom, as well as crew members from dozens of countries. People arrived with their suitcases, went through check-in, boarded the ship, settled into their cabins, and prepared for a week-long journey across the Mediterranean Sea. On January 13, 2012, the Costa Concordia departed from Civitavecchia, carrying 4,252 people, 3,206 passengers, and 1,046 crew members. The planned itinerary included stops at Savona, Marseille, Barcelona, Palma de Mallorca, Cagliari, and Palermo. However, the journey ended catastrophically just hours after departure near the tiny Italian island of Giglio. That evening, around 9:30, Captain Francesco Schettino arrived on the bridge and made a fateful decision. He ordered the ship to deviate from its planned route to perform a traditional sail-by salute, approaching close to Giglio Island to greet the locals with the ship's horn. This maneuver, which Schettino had performed at least 3 times before, was done to impress a retired captain friend, Mario Palombo, who was vacationing on the island. The captain switched off the autopilot and the ship's alarm system, claiming he knew the local waters well. However, there was a critical problem. The ship lacked a detailed navigational chart of Giglio at the proper scale, 1 to 20,000, showing underwater hazards. The only available chart was at 1 to 100,000 scale, showing merely the coastline. Making matters worse, Schettino invited several unauthorized people to the bridge, including his secret lover Domenica Semortan, the chief passenger administrator Manrico Giampedroni, and the head waiter. These individuals distracted him during the critical maneuvering operation. At the helm was Indonesian helmsman Jacob Rusli. As Captain Schettino issued rapid commands in English, Rusli struggled to understand and execute them promptly. He misheard directions, confused port and starboard, and repeatedly asked for clarification. The ship was traveling at 16 knots, too fast for such a dangerous maneuver. 10 minutes later, with the ship dangerously close to shore, just 650 meters away, and rapidly approaching a rocky cape extending far into the sea, Schettino spotted rocks barely visible above the water. He ordered hard to starboard, but it was too late. When he tried to correct by ordering hard to port, the helmsman initially turned the wrong way. 8 precious seconds were lost in the confusion. Moments later, at 9:45 that evening, traveling at 30 kilometers per hour, the Costa Concordia's left side struck a granite rock formation known as l'Escole Reef. The collision tore a massive 53-meter gash in the hull. Water began flooding in at 22 tons per second. The rock damaged 4 compartments, including the critical area housing the pump station and air conditioning compressor. The main electric motors, diesel generators, transformers, and main engines were all compromised. Less than a minute after impact, electricity throughout the ship failed. The massive vessel, now uncontrollable, continued moving forward by momentum alone. Most passengers were dining in restaurants or watching a theater performance when the ship shuddered violently. Chairs, dishes, and loose items crashed to the floor. People fell. Then, the lights went out. For 10 crucial minutes, the crew provided the passengers with false information, claiming only generator problems. Shortly before 10 o'clock, they announced via loudspeaker that the issue would be resolved shortly and urged passengers to remain calm in their cabins. But the ship was already listing noticeably to the left. Captain Schettino failed to immediately call for help or declare an emergency. A few minutes later, when he finally contacted the company's crisis center, he minimized the situation, claiming no casualties and that damage assessment was underway. He never activated the distress signal to search and rescue services. For over an hour, the powerless Costa Concordia drifted. The rudders were jammed in the hard to starboard position. Northeast winds of up to 10 meters per second and waves pushed the massive ship southwest toward shore, causing it to rotate nearly 180 degrees. Shortly before 11 o'clock that night, with a 12-degree list to starboard, the ship ran aground on rocks north of Giglio's port. Nearly 50 minutes after the collision, the general alarm finally sounded. 7 short blasts and 1 long. Many passengers were confused because they hadn't yet received the mandatory safety briefing, which was scheduled for the next day. Nearly 700 people on board didn't know where their life jackets were or how to reach the muster stations. Just 2 minutes after the alarm, Captain Schettino finally ordered passengers to the lifeboats. The evacuation began a quarter hour later, but it was chaotic and disorganized. As the list increased beyond 25 degrees, walking became nearly impossible. Lifeboats from the port side scraped against the tilting hull. 3 couldn't be launched at all because the automatic safety system blocked them due to excessive list. Priority for women, children, and pregnant passengers was largely ignored as panic set in. Some crew members helped passengers admirably, but others, particularly a group of Filipino stewards, pushed passengers aside and boarded lifeboats first. Some crew wore orange passenger life jackets instead of their assigned green ones to gain boarding priority. Half an hour later, Schettino, having changed from his uniform into civilian clothes, left the bridge. Navigator Simon Canessa remained alone to coordinate the evacuation for another 15 minutes before he too abandoned his post. Around 11:30 that night, Captain Schettino and his first officer left the ship in a lifeboat. Schettino later claimed he slipped and fell into the departing boat, though video footage contradicts this claim. 10 minutes after midnight, approximately 500 people remained trapped on the ship, which now had a list exceeding 35 degrees. The Coast Guard, led by Commander Gregorio De Falco, took charge of rescue operations. Rope ladders were deployed, and people climbed down to waiting rescue boats. Helicopters evacuated 16 people from the superstructure. About an hour later, in a now famous phone conversation, De Falco ordered Schettino to return to the ship. The captain refused. De Falco's furious response, "Vada a bordo, cazzo!" "Get back on board, for fuck's sake," became legendary in Italy. Deputy Mayor of Giglio, Mario Pellegrini, personally boarded the listing vessel to help coordinate rescues. The tiny village of Giglio Porto, with just 600 residents, received over 4,000 survivors. Locals provided blankets, tea, warm clothes, and shelter in churches, schools, and homes. The evacuation concluded in the early hours of January 14th, nearly 5 hours after midnight. The last survivor, passenger administrator Manrico Giampedroni, was rescued around 6 in the morning after spending nearly 30 hours trapped with a broken leg in the half-flooded Milan restaurant. A South Korean couple, Han Ki-duk and Hu Jin-yongi, who didn't understand English and had continued sleeping after the initial warnings, were rescued by helicopter late the following evening, more than 24 hours after the disaster began. 32 people died, 27 passengers, and 5 crew members. Among them were 16 men, 15 women, and 1 6-year-old girl. 18 victims were over 60 years old. The oldest was 86. Most were found in flooded sections of the ship. The body of the last victim, Indian waiter Russell Rebello, was discovered in November 2014, nearly 3 years after the disaster, after the ship was raised and identified through DNA analysis. 6 people were found guilty. The harshest sentence went to Captain Schettino, 16 years in prison for manslaughter, causing a shipwreck and abandoning ship. 5 others received sentences ranging from 20 months to 2 years and 10 months. The cruise company Costa Concordia was fined €1 million. The investigation revealed multiple failures: deviation from the safe route, language barriers between captain and helmsman, unauthorized persons on the bridge during maneuvering, delayed distress signals, chaotic evacuation, and inadequate safety training for many crew members. The disaster led to sweeping changes in maritime safety regulations. New rules required all passengers to complete safety drills before departure, mandatory use of electronic chart display systems, better waterproofing of critical equipment, and stricter bridge access controls during navigation. 20 months after the disaster, in September 2013, the largest salvage operation ever attempted began. The Costa Concordia was successfully righted using massive hydraulic jacks and sponsons attached to both sides. The operation cost $1.2 billion. 10 months later, in July 2014, the The wreck was refloated and towed to Genoa for scrapping. The Costa Concordia disaster remains the largest passenger ship ever wrecked, a grim reminder that even in modern times, human error, poor communication, and inadequate leadership can transform a pleasure cruise into a tragedy. The capsized giant lying on its side off Giglio became a haunting symbol of hubris and negligence, visible for over 2 years as a warning to all who passed by the island's shores.